Farmers have cultivated New Hampshire's land for centuries. Today, over 4,000 farms operate in this mostly white, college-educated, fiscally conservative New England state. Farmers here are known for producing milk and apples, but each of the 3 farms I visited were unique. That may help explain how locals in the agriculture industry felt about the upcoming presidential primary.
So everything we grow is certified organic.
It was a brisk 20 degrees with a couple of inches of snow on the ground when I met James Stever at his home. He and his wife Marley co-own Generation Farm, which lies fewer than 10 miles from the state capital. The couple have been specializing in microgreens for over a decade, selling seedlings such as pea shoots, radishes, and sunflowers before they fully mature. Their 3 greenhouses are operational year-round, which keep their business afloat. While walking on the farm, I did catch a remnant of the warmer temperatures.
That's a zombie lettuce. So that was lettuce.
Last year, the National Weather Service recorded nearly 56 inches of rain in Manchester, an increase of roughly 50% from 2022. The sheer amount of rain hurt farmers, including James, who reduced his financial safety net. This is on top of rising costs that many Americans have signaled are an important issue in the 2024 contest.
Pretty much the cost of every single input that goes into farming or food production has gone up, during this period, starting with the trade wars, accelerating during the pandemic, and then getting even worse after the pandemic with inflation.
This is the first of many.
The trade war James mentioned has gone on since 2018, when the United States began imposing tariffs on Chinese products. China, along with 5 other trading partners, countered with retaliatory tariffs on various American agricultural goods. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimated these actions cost farmers at least $27 billion between 2018 and 2019. Generation Farms still feels the impact of those tariffs, with increased prices on manufacturing components such as recycled clamshells.
You can be selling more stuff than you've ever sold. You can be doing better in terms of revenue than you've ever been doing. But in the end of the day, you will be making less money.
If either Biden or Trump are reelected, they would finish a second term in their 80s, which is concerning for some voters like James.
I worry that on both sides of the aisle, by having such old candidates, they're both in their 80s. I mean, we're not hearing from younger politicians that maybe are going to be running in the future.
As for who James plans to vote for on Tuesday,
I'm likely going to vote for Joe Biden.
He described Biden as the safer candidate, whose accomplishments have been poorly conveyed by the Democratic Party.
They have gotten some legislation passed with Republican votes. Like we talked about one earlier, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Act. I wouldn't say that he gets total credit for doing those things, but I would say that Joe Biden was dealt a difficult hand, and he's played his cards pretty well.
The glistening blue waters of Lake Winnipesaukee were frozen over when I visited Beans and Greens Farm in nearby Guilford. Chris Coleus purchased the farm stand in 2021 after trying his hand at the distribution industry in Massachusetts.
One of the reasons I bought this is I wanted to make sure that it would be pandemic resistant.
The farm's beer garden, corn maze, and wildflower growing areas are closed for the winter, unlike the stand. Built in the 18th century, the shop was bursting with sizzling chili, soups, pastas, cookies, and locally sourced produce. With an election that has drawn a lot of attention to national issues, Chris hopes the next president thinks locally.
You look in your town, you look in your state, and you look in your country before you buy goods from other parts of the world. And I think having a leader that can really unite us and have people think about that, we'll all be better off.
Soaring inflation and rainfall resulted in an economic dip for Beans and Greens at the end of last year. Lowering costs represents just one issue Chris wants to see addressed in Washington.
I think inflation, I think tackling the federal deficit is really important, and I think having a plan for our seniors.
Just outside of Portsmouth lies Newfields, a small town that Governor Chris Sununu and Senator Maggie Hassan call home, and where I went to visit Vernon Family Farm. Upon entering the 33-acre property, I was immediately greeted by Yeti, the family's 2-year-old Bernese mountain dog. He was not the only one seemingly intrigued by my arrival. All these sheep back here, if you look at them, they're all looking straight at me. It is a little creepy. I feel like I'm being watched. Jeremiah Vernon co-owns the farm alongside his wife Nicole, who is a local high school Spanish teacher. As the sun beamed down on the farm, the New London native was sipping hot coffee in a Yeti mug, of course. Since 2022, the Vernons have been actively involved in negotiations with the Newfields Planning Board. They want to authorize a site plan and prove their original products generate at least 35% of sales at their farm stand, which is a state requirement for agricultural business. A GoFundMe page was launched to help the family pay off legal fees. Over $28,000 have been raised to this point. Jeremiah hopes the upcoming election marks a shift toward relaxing government regulations.
I think code and code enforcement has gone completely out of control. The amount of money and regulations and paperwork that we have to file to sell you bone broth, it's unbelievable. It's bone broth. It's bones boiled in water. Shouldn't the consumer have the ability to do some vetting of what they're consuming?
A recent Politico analysis found that net farm income has grown by over $70 billion under Biden. Average net farm income was $94 billion between 2017 and 2019, less than the $165 billion between 2021 and 2023. The Department of Agriculture has also announced various programs aimed at helping small farmers, including a $1 billion investment to bolster processing capacities. These initiatives have not helped the Vernons, who sell many products on single-digit margins.
Our farm is not in a good place economically. Nothing that has come through the government has improved our situation. It is very depressing to be 10 years in and feel like it's just as hard as when we started.
As the primary approaches, Jeremiah may not head to the polls altogether.
This is the first year in my entire life that I've thought about not voting. Which is a sad statement to make, but I really feel like it doesn't matter. What am I going to do? It's already Trump versus Biden. It doesn't matter what I do.
He has considered voting for Ambassador Nikki Haley in the general election if she were to face Biden. But if she is not the Republican nominee, Jeremiah says he may lean toward a third-party candidate, as he is not a fan of either major frontrunner.
I think Trump is the worst thing that's happened to us as a president ever. I also think that Biden is not far behind.
Which ties into how invested Jeremiah is in the primary. The father of 3 feels the contest does not matter, and that the government does not speak for farmers like him.
Small businesses, and I think explicitly farmers, are at the bottom. That's where, and to change that is not a person. To change that is some massive systemic change that is really not going to come because there's really no incentive for it to come. That would be unsettling to so many 1%ers in big businesses that they're going to make sure that that does not happen.
3 farms, each owner with a unique perspective as to who should lead America into the future and what the next president should do to elevate cultivators. They represent a small fraction of farmers in the Granite State, but tell a story about how the people who feed America are feeling heading into the first presidential primary. For WRHU News, I'm Michael Richardson.